Before we get into you and your background, we have IR here for Hagerty, right?
Yes.
How many analysts cover Hagerty?
We technically have one sell-side firm, the other small shop that picked up coverage basically report. We don't have any detailed coverage on the company today.
Got it. Okay, for those at home. So there's one. And what are the consensus 2023 numbers?
There are no consensus numbers on it. There's no sell-side coverage.
Because, so the analysts who picked up coverage didn't model out more than 6 months. Okay, so anyway, I just want for context, right? Like this is fairly off the beaten path. But we were lucky to have
yes.
We're lucky to have McKeel Hagerty here, who is the CEO. And I think you'll see over time, this is a jockey bet, and this is our jockey. So
I'm a little heavy to be a jockey, but I'm pretty good in the car and insurance world.
So I realized, yes, you are.
Yes.
I realized we kind of jumped over like exactly kind of, can you give a little more context on Hagerty? We kind of went into the like what we saw at a really high level and gave some quantitative stuff, but can you give like most people here, because again, it's off the beaten path, don't really know.
Sure. So this is a family founded and run business, started in 1984 in Traverse City, Michigan, which is a small town. My mom and dad were insurance people that loved classic cars and wooden boats. And when they wanted a retirement business in the house that I was growing up with, they sold their insurance agency. They said, hey, wait a minute. There's a pretty big opportunity in the wooden boat insurance space. The classic car space was already pretty filled with players, and we got into this business in 1984. It grew rapidly nationally. We got into the classic car space. My sisters and I joined the business later on, and suddenly realized, wait a minute, there's a much, much larger business in the classic car space than we saw out there. So collector cars, everybody's seen a great vintage car driving around the road. And the big thing that we discovered over the years of kind of getting this going and scaling it and realizing that the big challenge to any insurance business is how do you grow, how do you scale it, is to also know that you got a big enough market to grow into. So for us, a lot of what we've done is to develop the data capabilities to understand this kind of very, very niche-y space. And so when we throw numbers out, if you read any of our numbers about a registered vehicle total addressable market of 43 million vehicles in North America, this is not some fantasy made-up media number. This is a number that we can actually decode the serial numbers on vehicles pre-1981 and post-1981, registered in the United States and Canada, which is our primary markets. We're also in the UK. And we can tell you what the extra cars are in households. So these are cars that are extra cars that people own for fun. If you try to get all tied up in the words like classic or antique or exotic or whatever, you just get lost in the weird words that car people use to describe it. But my mother describes it the best. My mother's 87 years old, started this business way back in the day with my mother. And I'm like, Mom, hey, why did this business work so well? And what is the actual secret sauce? And she will tell you, because people take good care of their toys. If you have something special in your life that you bought, you love, you own, you bought it to signal how important or cool you are, you take really good care of it. And because of that, the insurance dynamic, the risk around it is completely different. You buy a Toyota Camry, you park it on the street, it's going to get crushed now and then. You buy something really special that you think is awesome, whether you pay millions of dollars for it or 50 grand for it or $5,000 for it, and you love it, it's that love, it's that care that makes the insurance dynamics very different. So, but what we realized is selling insurance is not enough. It's hard to sell insurance, not a sexy subject. I've tried to make insurance sexy since 1995. I have failed completely. What I realized is cars are sexy. They're cool. So if you talk about cars, you talk about the lifestyle aspects of cars, and you make this more about the lifestyle of cars and less about insurance. The insurance transaction takes care of itself. But then the secret sauce here, as Kyle mentioned, is that we're a risk taker. We don't just sell insurance, which is 92% of our revenue, plus the other things that we do. The big insurance companies or any risk taker, the way they make money is to manage their loss ratio. We knew we had the data and we understood the car world well enough across this kind of lifestyle of people who love cars to say, look, if we can control that loss ratio, even in weird times like this, set aside, like the last thing this world needed right now was Hurricane Ian, right? Or hurricanes or wildfires like we've had for the last 3 years, which crushed 27% of the profits of some of the big insurance companies in places like California. But in our space, people move their cars. They take good care of them. It's just different. The dynamics are fundamentally different than normal insurance. So that was the model. So when we went public last year via SPAC, and I get it, that's a 4-letter word, and I'm happy to talk about that and why we did it, if that's of interest or not. But for us, it was actually kind of important. I needed the time to tell our story. It wasn't immediately obvious to a lot of the investors that came into us early, even in the pipe, and we needed that time to tell the story. So I get it. SPACs kind of have some, how would you describe it? You'd say like some stink on them, maybe a little bit. What would you say? Like some, but I don't care what's happening with the rest of them. Like, we've had a business that grows and is profitable, and the best thing about insurance, every single year we start out, 90+% of our revenue, every January 1st, we have it cooked. So we can, like you described here, is we get to start every year and just move forward.
Right. And so, I mean, in the SPAC process, you just foisted a bunch of crap on the market, right? I mean, your family basically doesn't own any stock anymore, right?
Yeah, right. No, yes, of course. So one of the big things that we went through this whole thing is, so there's a closely held family business. We knew we wanted to be owners for a long time. And we knew that going public was going to be a part of our world, and so it worked out really well. But we also knew that we approached it a little bit differently in the way that we went through it. We knew that there's the SPAC process. The biggest risk that most of the SPACs have, you read it in the it was painful watching in the news for the last year, all the redemptions. So one of our strategies when we went out and realized we have this kind of business that we had a lot of confidence and we can model pretty confidently out into the future how it will grow, is that we actually, instead of going for a bigger SPAC, we went for a smaller one because we knew we'd reduce the redemption risk. But we also had a lot of confidence that we could bring some friends and kind of family. Our partners, our strategic partner, State Farm, dropped $500 million into it so we could raise a bigger pipe. And so we approached it differently, and it's worked well.
But after all is said and done, your family still owns
52%
of the company, right? So you care?
I'm very happy.
So can you actually give a little bit on your background? It's a little bit non-traditional.
Yep.
You were born into the business, but can you just
Okay, yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur all my life. My first business, I describe it, so my first business was an apple orchard in northern Michigan. I started when I was actually 11 years old. But right shortly thereafter, I made my first acquisition. I bought a 1967 Porsche 911S for $500. And I dug it out of a snowbank and I restored it in the garage with my dad. So I was an entrepreneur. I figured when I went to college a few years later, lived in northern Michigan, the winters suck. I wanted to go someplace warm. I went to Pepperdine University, Malibu, California. Genius on my part. But I realized that I needed to do something different. I gave up the apple orchard business and realized the cars were where I really wanted to be. Shortly thereafter, I actually came to New York. I was a seminarian. I studied to be a Russian Orthodox priest. So I spent a couple of years there and got a graduate degree and then did my doctoral work in ancient Greek philosophy in Boston College. I did not finish because the business needed my help. So it's a little bit unorthodox for a nearly Orthodox priest. But what I realized is that when you go to seminary, what a seminary is at its purest sense, it's a leadership school. And I learned a lot about how you can lead people and what messages actually move people. And the car world is about passion, and it's about the love of things. And the insurance world is about telling a story about risk and reward and all that kind of thing. And actually, it's a non-traditional background. I make tremendous dinner conversation about really obscure topics if you're interested. But it was a natural way actually to get into business, and I loved it.
I mean,
I know you normally like the Harvard Club. They have a lot of guys like me up here.
I say to Kyle all the time, "You're not normal," and I mean it as a compliment. Like, you're not normal either. I mean it as a complete compliment.
Genuinely not.
100%. Yes. By the way, like, it shows up in numbers, right? So the loss ratio is better. The customer acquisition costs are like half. But you were also voted for the 4th year in a row to the Fortune Best Places to Work in Finance and Insurance, right? So, like, I think we'd be probably better off if more companies were run by almost priests, right?
Well, and look, it's a non-financial number, but there are a lot of studies about very high, like if you study them that use Net Promoter as a way to judge satisfaction of their customers. So we have an ambient 81 to 82 Net Promoter score year over year. It's a non-financial metric, but if you actually look at the highest Net Promoter score businesses, these are companies that are loved by their customers. And we grow mid-teens, like net new customer organically year over year. So you only have to do that a few years. You double in size every few years, especially the way we make money. And it's all because of word of mouth. And companies that have a high net promoter score just grow. They grow better than everybody else. Now, the insurance industry has an ambient net promoter score average of like 44%. And a lot of the big insurance companies, a couple of which advertise in television, actually have negative net promoter scores. You can. Like, they hate you so much, not only will they not recommend you to a friend, they hate your guts. So we have 82% net promoter score. It's by far, I think, the largest in the industry. There are a couple that are near the high 60s, about 70. But that's why we grow. And you do that, you have high retentions, and you do it in a passion space, even in a recession. If you want to talk about, we're not using the R word. We're just saying it's like the economy is slowing down. If y'all didn't know, the economy is slowing down, but people hang on to their cars. Just because the economy is slowing down, if they have something they love, they're going to hang on to it. Probably like they're going to hang on to their homes.
Yeah. So your model is a little bit
unorthodox. You going to bring that up again?
No,
yes.
no.
Yes.
But
I brought that up.
But
yes.
we've talked about partnerships and a little bit like you partner with 9 of the top 10 insurers, I believe, right? Can you just like describe that? Because most people are like, who's Hagerty?
Yeah,
like,
so the biggest thing about insurance,
big
biggest problem with insurance, like in general, just think, I sell insurance for a living. How do you go out and market yourself? So there are kind of only 2 ways if you're an insurance company. You sell directly to the consumer, so think Progressive. Progressive and Geico sell directly to their consumers. How do they grow? They spend a couple $1 billion a year in advertising. They're a unique new anomaly in the insurance space, and they only work because the advertising world kind of works, both digitally and in TV. But a couple $1 billion a year is expensive for everybody. Remember, back in the day, Budweiser was the biggest advertiser in the year when they spent $500 million a year. So you think like 4x of that in just a short period of time. It's all in car insurance. Not fun to watch if you watch TV. The other way you do it is you have to master distribution in some way. So you have a better way to cook the main street hometown insurance agent and broker that sells all of you your insurance coverage out there. Others do it that way. So State Farm has 19,200 captive agents that do nothing but sell State Farm policies. State Farm has been the #1 auto insurer in the United States since 1942 and the #1 homeowners insurer since 1956. Can you think of a single business that has had that much persistence out there? Now, there are mutual companies. Sorry, you can't buy stock in them. They're amazing. So our model was, we realized if we wanted to really grow, we have to kind of do both. We'd brand ourselves directly to the consumer and make them think that we are the greatest car people of all time. Never use insurance language ever. You go out there, you're at car shows, you talk about car values. Now we have an auction company. We're going to be talking about the buying and selling of cars. The insurance transaction takes care of itself. A good percentage of our business, over 50%, is actually sold through agents and brokers, through this sort of wholesale side of the business. But the bulk of the 43 million vehicles in my space are all locked up in the State Farms, the Allstates, the Farmers, the Progressives, the Nationwides, all the big companies that advertise on television. So it was about 15 years ago I realized, like, okay, we're just killing ourselves trying to compete with these people. They're gigantic, huge behemoth insurance companies that are hard to kill. So we realized if we could just partner with them, come up with some partnership and say, look, you have this 2 or 3% of your insurance premium. They love cars. You don't love cars, but they love them. We're going to take care of this tiny little segment of people that have cars that are actually appreciating in value rather than depreciating in value. Let us handle it for you. So our first partnership was approaching 20 years ago, was with Allstate. Allstate is it's kind of a declining insurance company, but it's still $20 billion insurance company, and we created this partnership, and they've been an incredible double-digit growth partner for us ever since. As you mentioned, we have 9 of the top 10. We work with a number of the top 25, but the one that was missing in our sort of panoply of insurance partners was State Farm. It was a 25-year conversation for me to get in the door. They do not talk to people. No one knows who their executives are. They have more money than anybody. And I finally got in the door and convinced them that you have all of these classic car, collector car, vintage car owners that are not being properly served. Will you let us help you? And that was the deal.
Not properly served, like, unless you're a car guy, you're kind of like, what's it talking
Okay,
about?
so
Like,
you own a vintage car. The problem is they're going up in value. Insurance companies don't know that. We know that. We have more data on the space than anybody. We have a patented serial number decoder. We're the standard of how these kind of vehicles are valued, and that was by design. I have this theory that the best businesses kind of control the intellectual high ground of their space. The intellectual high ground in my space is what things are valued for. So what is a car, people, what do you think that's worth? It's a common term. People will look at my 67 Porsche 911S, and they'll say, what do you think it's worth? My answer is, I told you what I paid for it. Everybody remember? I paid $500 for it. So is it worth 500 bucks? You all know it's worth quite a bit more than that. It's worth about 350 grand. It's the best investment I ever made. Well, other than my $100 my mom made me pay for my Hagerty stock back in the day. She did. She made me write a check for 100 bucks to buy my Hagerty stock back in the day. But that's another story. So other than that, I'm a good Porsche investor. So the big thing of what cars are worth is the intellectual high ground. Valuation matters. Big insurance companies do not know how to value our stuff. They don't know how to value art. They don't know how to value a lot of things. They're great at handling risk. And so for us, by being the source of data, how the industry looked at how things are valued, we could start helping people get things properly insured. And because they're going up in value, actually, things like inflation in the last several years in the collector car market has been a tremendous tailwind for us. Like right now, we not only have the opportunity to take rate in an inflationary market, we're able to increase the value of people's cars because they are genuinely worth more. So it's been a really magic effect for us. And it's the way that we partner with these insurance companies because it's a tiny, tiny piece of their world, and they don't want to lose these customers to us in some way. So our whole sales pitch, when you go into a multi-billion-dollar insurance company and say, hey, look, here's why you should want to work with us because you don't want to lose your best customers to us. Let's keep them with you. We partner. Everybody's happy. So it's been pretty magic.
There's just a service component to it, too, though.
Yeah.
You talked about the valuation. Like you used an example of, like, replacing a windshield on a...
Yeah, so, well, I remember there was a big $20 billion insurance company guy, I'll tell you, and he fancied himself a car guy, and we had a tiny little couple $1 million book of business with him. And he said, he actually flew to my hometown, said, hey, look, we love you, but we're leaving. We're going to go into competition with you. We're going to throw a bunch of money at this, and thank you. Sayonara. And I said, hey, look, you're a car person. You like cars. Do you know what a Camaro is? A Chevy Camaro. He said, yeah, of course I know what a Camaro is. I said, well, if you like Camaros, you probably know that the 1969 Camaro is probably the most collected and most attractive of all vintage Camaros. And of course, he said, oh, of course. And I said, but what I know, and you may not know, is that in 1969, they made 147 different variants of a 1969 Camaro, and the least valuable of them is worth about $11,000, and the most valuable is worth about $1.1 million, and I can tell the difference, but you can't. Are you sure you want to compete with us? And they've been a great partner ever since. So the deal is just specialization. It's a niche. It's really niche-y. But I think what surprised you, I think it surprised Kyle, and Kyle is like some kind of like dark magic ninja
Not
of
normal,
the
right?
spreadsheet, right? Thousands of lines of spreadsheets. Is like the car world, my car world is bigger than people think. This industry is bigger than you think. Just no business has ever unlocked the value of it in the way that we think our model does over time. And so by going public, I get it. Like going public as a private company is completely terrifying. Like it's terrifying. It's interesting, but it's a bet on the future. And our bet on the future is we've got the data, we know the space, we're really good at it, and we know how to get this done both in the U.S. and abroad. So it's been fun, and we're grateful for your interest.
Thank you. Do you mind just the next big leg of growth is like, I mean, there's the State Farm piece, the reinsurance, but marketplace, yeah. Right? You guys made an investment, and you guys have a bunch of kind of assets that make one think you might be successful in marketplace, right? And that's a bet you're making. Can you just like, again, these guys don't really know. Can you leave like the constellation of the pieces and how they might fit together?
Sure. Well, like I said, I've been trying to make insurance sexy since 1995. Like that's been my mission in life, and I've been struggling with it. Like hard to do, but people love shopping. So if anybody's ever read or heard Neil Ferguson's, 6 Killer Apps of Western Society, I think number 5 is shopping. People in the West love to shop. And if you make a little bit of money, you love to shop for cool stuff. You like to shop for clothes. You love to shop for real estate. I know when I'm traveling, I shop on Zillow. People love cars. And whether you own one or just want to shop for one, you want to look at stuff. That's one of the reasons why we created our valuation tools. But we never had the ability to take advantage of the actual buying and selling transactional value of the cars that, ironically, in insurance, you have really good data on what's being bought and sold. Like every time you insure something, every time you buy a new home or buy a ski condo or a new car, like your insurance company knows that, None of them take advantage of it, other than a little bit USAA. USAA is the only U.S. company that I can think of that actually takes advantage of it in some way. So to give you just like in context as a public number we put out in our last quarter was, in the last 12 months, our members, we call our customers members, we have this whole drivers club thing, and we treat our customers like a community. They bought and sold about 300,000 vehicles in our space, which was worth about a $12 billion transactional value, just in the last 12 months. And so when people say like, okay, why would you, that would seem to be a great opportunity for you to get in the marketplace. So we started the valuation tools. That's kind of like the shopping thing. That's window shopping. Get to look up values. You get to learn about that. We have all the media assets. We have a magazine. We have 2.2 million subscribers on our YouTube channel. There's not, the word insurance is never mentioned once on our YouTube channel. It's about the fun and love of cars. So it's all about kind of creating demand. So right after we went public, we made a minority investment, then completed an acquisition of an auction company called Broad Arrow Group, which is a group of veterans from Sotheby's who were they were all classic car specialists, ran part of their collector car auction business. We started a digital classified ad business. We're going to launch later this year a digital auction business. We had our first live auction in August in Monterey, and it was just like out of the chute. We had a pretty good sale of $55 million worth of cars, immediately accretive to the business. But the most interesting piece that we keep thinking about is how do you bring dealers into the space? We bought a dealer SaaS inventory management business that manages the largest group of automotive dealers in our space that list and buy and sell cars. So what we're trying to do is take a kind of systems level view of how people buy cars out of this galaxy of 43 million registered vehicles in North America. A lot of them buy and sell. How can we put ourselves in the center of that, and what would be a differentiator? So what do you think about the event side, the digital side, the data side? And then you also realize that what's the one thing an insurance company tends to bring to things, even though you may not think about this, is you bring trust. So for us, bringing trust elements, you bring warranty products, you bring different sorts of inspections, you bring escrow products, and even financing to the transactional business. We think it's going to be great for us. So we're off and running, and we look forward to telling you more later.
Great. Can you just hit on, you have so many like pieces, right? I mean, like the inventory management for car dealers, right? The drivers club, can you hit on, like, you're in communication with how many people, how often?
Okay,
roughly?
so members in our community, it's about 2.5 million members in our automotive community, and which is way larger than like other automotive media properties. Our magazine, that is our club magazine, is now the second highest circulation car magazine in the world by audited circ. We passed Road and Track this year, which is owned by Hearst. So we're pretty big in the media space, and that's what the Hagerty Drivers Club was meant to be. It was actually my insight, by the way, when I was back doing my doctoral work in Boston. I was doing a class in Plato's Republic in Greek, which is like really mind-numbing, I got to tell you. So we were at about book 6, about halfway through the semester, and I remember I was in the middle of the class, and I said, hey, if we just treated ourselves like a club instead of an insurance company, like this is how we could unlock a lot of value, right? That's what every graduate student does. So I remember like literally I did one thing that few people do. I got up in the middle of my class, I got up, walked out, went back and told my wife we're moving back to Michigan. We're going to go work in the family business. And I dropped out of my doctoral program. And ever since then, what we did is create this membership opportunity around the insurance transaction. Insurance is a wonderful, wonderful recurring revenue business. It's just not fun to talk about. And there are very few companies that have ever created this kind of club or community-like environment. Right? If you think about it just off the top of your head, back in the day, decades ago, AAA had this kind of clubby feature, but you didn't actually meet any other members. AARP, insurance business, kind of clubby, but you just had to be over 50. Whoops, sorry. But they did great things for you, lobbying. They had a great media organization. And by the way, they had the largest circulation magazine in the world, Modern Maturity, at 20 million. No, an insurance company, really, the largest circulation magazine ever. Then you have USAA, that only actually served this tiny niche. Imagine a tiny niche of people that had this unique customer characteristic, which were military officers and their direct descendants. Military officers are kind of disciplined people, right, Kyle? Probably a little bit of a different insurance risk. Genius. So actually, if you look at the Hagerty Drivers Club, that's the best thing. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery.
And from a marketplace perspective, I mean, you're sending emails to 2 million people.
Over and over. And our pass round rate on our magazine is like almost 3x. So every time our magazine, I was actually in a barber shop in Florida or someplace last year, and there was like nothing but Hagerty Drivers Club magazines in this barber shop. I'm like, these are my people.
Just touch on live events for a second.
Yeah. So car people gather. Now we're in the middle of Manhattan. Car people do not gather here, although there used to be some pretty good car events here. Car people gather outside of where we're sitting right now. But car people have this bizarre kind of communal element to them. They love to gather. They love to go to car shows. They go to races. They gather at races for competition. They go to car shows where their cars are judged. There's a new type of event that was created about 15, almost 20 years ago called a Cars and Coffee, where people go and just show up on a Saturday morning in a parking lot, and they bring whatever they have, and they love doing that. It's kind of an anomaly in the car world, but for us, it's normal. So what we realized, because our teams right now will attend between 2,200 and 2,500 car events in the U.S. anyway on an annual basis. Just any given weekend, we're somewhere set up, talking about what we do, getting them to join the Drivers Club. But we realized the biggest car events are actually pretty good businesses with big gate. They sell tickets. They have sponsors. We were sponsors of many of them. So we started acquiring a few kind of marquee car event businesses a couple of years ago with the idea that if we can run them, we can bring them to scale. We don't want to ruin them. It's like a horse race or anything. They all have their unique characteristics. We kind of want to bring a little bit of stability to them. But then it becomes kind of a self-funding marketing mechanism for us. So like our Amelia Island, which is a really marquee car event down in Florida in every March. It's 25,000 people come to this thing a day. They're paying for tickets, and they're basically paying for the right to us to put our name in front of them and to create a great car event and to have a good time. So it's just kind of one of the ways I've been trying to decode this car world for years, and that's just we're just getting started.
Right, and I mean, if you study platform businesses, right, like there are challenges around getting demand and supply. Right, they have the supply of cars in a lot of different ways, and they have the 2 million plus members. They have the media properties, and then there's another element of trust, like you need in a two-sided marketplace. So, like on paper, you've kind of put it all together. Like now it comes down to execution, I guess. But,
Here we go.
So
you got to execute. Well, I will tell you the one thing. So raising capital to grow a business like ours is great, but when we started more than a year ago quite a bit more than a year ago to go through the process of going public, having a currency to be able to compensate our team members. As a closely held family business, it's something I dreamed about for a long time, but we just never had available to us. It didn't work. It was probably number 8 on the list of why go public for all the pain that you go through. But truly by the end, it was probably number 2 or 3, like pretty close to why you do it. And it's already been amazing because being able to attract people like Patrick and Jay who are here in the room with me, well, I like to think we were handsome enough and beautiful enough to get you to come to work here, but it's been amazing, and it's a big reason why we've done it, and just kind of up the profile of the company. Right. So all is good.
Great. I want to ask one more question,
Sure.
and I'll open it up if folks want to ask a question or two. The R word, right? Can you give like a little bit of like the playbook? So it's like, oh, he sounds pretty confident. Like, like what you've been through a recession before? Like, kind of what do you do? Like, no one here is running an insurance company, and you're like an insurance company plus all these pieces, and like what's a little bit of like the path?
Well, I love your line and like the number 2 example you had up here, which is Dairy Queens don't go out of business or whatever it is. So people who have stuff still need insurance next year, whether it's harder in the economy or not. So I've been in my seat, well, since the late 1990s, and when our business was a smaller business, but we were really starting to grow and kind of get into what it is we were good at. So my first kind of recession was the dot-com crisis. We've seen countless things, hurricanes and catastrophic events. The financial crisis was like probably for a lot of us here like truly scary, and then I think about COVID and like what was the effect on the business. And in reality, for a lot of businesses, let's go backwards. COVID was a health crisis. It wasn't a financial crisis for a lot of businesses. It was actually a windfall for a lot of businesses, as it was for us. The financial crisis was a recession, as was the dot-com. And what we discovered is buying cars and owning cars that we're involved with, the types of cars, of that 43 million, there's a piece of it that's about confidence, but there's also a piece of it that's just about love. And when people have something that they love, like I said, my mother said, like, people take good care of their toys. when you have something that you love and it's important to you, you hang on to it. So my 67, when people say, what's your favorite car, McKeel? I have a lot of cool cars. It's been a pretty good car run for me, but it's my 67 Porsche. I paid $500 for it, and there's not a dollar amount in the world that anybody would ever peel it out of my fingers. And ever, like not ever. And so if I have to pay to insure it or whatever, and that's what our customers are like. So we're very resilient during recessions. We grow double teens. We grow in the teens every year. We always do every year. That's our model. Our model is to create double-digit growth each and every year and just kind of keep that going. Kind of Jim Collins' 20-mile march. And during recessions, what you see is like, well, I'm sure we'll see in our marketplace business, you'll see like a tiny drop in demand, but those who are really into this, they see this as a buying opportunity. And those who really love their cars are not going to sell them. So we kind of get it coming and going both ways. And it's just been we're not immune to recessions, like demand drops and expenses get more difficult, wage inflation, all the stuff that affects every business that you're invested in. But as a core underlying business, like onward, that's what we do. We drive on.
Got it. Thank you. Anyone, any questions for McKeel?
Yes.
Oh, Rita.
Is this your mother-in-law?
That is my mother-in-law.
Okay.
First of all, totally fascinated by the business. It is a cash cow. It's amazing. You have the psyche of the customer nailed. I'm wondering, you have this valuation tool that's ancillary to your business, and you use to pull in or create the advantage with partners. Have you tried to monetize the data itself as a separate entity?
It's a great question. So the question up here was our valuation tool. We have a huge insight into our space. And do we use that valuation tool? We monetize it in any way? Only modestly. So we use it primarily for our own benefit. We do sell our data to we've sold it in the past to some auction partners who want to do some analytics work around their space. The one area I've figured that actually would be our biggest customer of our valuation tools would actually be state governments. And that one just scares me because there are certain states that use the valuation of vehicles to charge for property tax on cars. Not every state considers a car a property tax. And so this is not a political statement in any way. It's just like, I bet we could make millions of dollars selling this data to states, and I just think we won't do it right now, unless we were like forced to do it or something like that. But it's one of those things. We've had a lot of friends who've done like great data plays with governments around that, but I just think it would start eroding the trust people have in us from a car perspective. The people who love these cars, just say like, be as impartial as you can. And by being impartial with our data, like it's really fun to see the value of cars go up over time. And in our world, we've tracked the value of cars through recessions and all sorts of weirdness, and they do tend to go up. Even very, very old cars that you'd think young people were not very interested in, they too go up. But you also have to have the courage to value them down. And after, for example, the financial crisis, there was a big chunk of our cars in our space that actually went down in value, and you have to kind of soberly mark them down and recognize that that year people may insure their cars for less, and we get a little bit less premium. But the authenticity for us was so important to say, like, we just have to tell the truth always about what the values of cars are and give our customers who love us the advantage. So, but if you have any ideas on how to monetize it, I'd love to hear.
I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
Oh, Alejandro?
So, what are your biggest challenges both as a business and organizationally?
So biggest challenges as a business and organizationally, like they're probably, so we've been going through massive amounts of investments in digital, kind of overhauling our digital infrastructure. And we're going to continue to do so for probably forever, some of it. But like companies like ours go through these growing pains of how to right-size your digital spend. And I mean core infrastructure and data security and integrity and all that stuff. And I mean, I'm heartened by the fact that some bigger companies than ours spend like terribly a lot more than we do. But that's the stuff that kind of you have to be really careful about. And for us, and for a lot of kind of financial services or kind of service-like businesses, we're often, you have to be really careful how you buy some of the software. Like I'm talking about like household public company name brand software services that they're like, oh, we're going to fix everything for you. Well, they don't. And so for us, it's like being really focused on the consumer and making sure, like, whenever you sign up for some big SaaS contract, because that's like taxes on your business, is make sure you do it well and have the kind of teams that know how to integrate the stuff, and that's probably the biggest thing. I was really worried about how we were going to attract A-level talent to a degree, given all the cool tech businesses and all the startups, and I do a decent amount of venture and private investing in other startup companies, and I was kind of worried about that, but going public and kind of doing some of the brand stuff that we do has really helped us raise the visibility of the company to attract the kind of talent. So a year ago or 18 months ago, I would have said I was really worried about how do we get people, but this just sort of like constant heartburn of how do you manage your technology spend it's kind of always there.
All right.
Congratulations, you've obviously got a very sticky customer base, which is great. You talk about technology.
He's in the insurance business.
Yes.
Watch out.
There's a lot of momentum in some companies that charge for car insurance by the mile. How do you think about that? Is that an opportunity for you? Is that a threat to you? You could argue that might be appealing to.
No, thank you. So the question is insurance by the mile, or what's in the insurance industry is called MBI, or mileage-based insurance. It was called UBI, but somebody else stole that acronym from us, which was Universal Basic Income. So right now it's not a mature technology, and it was like pioneered in this country by the Progressive Insurance Company, and actually the best experiments in usage-based insurance or mileage-based insurance have been in the UK. And what they discovered over there is like there's this large, well, first of all, everyone thinks they're a better driver than the other person in the car. And so mileage-based or usage-based insurance kind of plays into that idea that I'm a better driver, like psychologically. And so it was pretty interestingly successful in the UK because everybody thought, oh, I'm going to sign up for this because I'm going to save money because I'm a better driver. And I know the people who started that program over there, and almost every single one of them paid more than they would have if they had just gotten a quote online and just bought insurance in a normal way. So it's until there's greater adoption, the math isn't quite there. And it's also immature in two ways, and that is that the earliest adoption of mileage-based insurance was like plugging a device into what's called the OBD port in a modern car. Now, in my case, my cars not only don't have OBD ports, in some cases they don't have headlights. So they don't have the oldest car, like we do insure modern cars. You think of modern Ferrari or Porsche or Corvette. But earliest cars don't have electrical systems. So the only way it's going to work is on an app. It's going to work on a mobile phone. Everybody has one of these. And so far, nobody's been able to get widespread adoption of an app that actually tracks how you drive super successfully, even if you save $100 a year. So it's an opportunity. I suppose in theory it could be a disruptor long term, but we've been running a couple of year experiment in mileage-based insurance that we're looking at how we can do it. We got to figure out how people are willing to have their driving tracked. So
Got it.
I don't think, has anybody ever driven above the speed limit here? So show of hands. If you're a driver, like, yeah, no, I've never driven above the speed limit. Of course, well, that's the problem, right?
All
But
right.
thank you.
One more question.
Yes.
From the back.
Very interesting story, appreciate it. Curious, what's your investment philosophy or policy rather than the premiums that you receive? And how do you invest that money?
So how do we invest the float, like in the reinsurance business? Well, it took me a decade to get our reinsurance business going because it is actually by definition a capital-intensive thing. And so I decided early on that our investment philosophy was going to be that we made the money by growing potatoes. In other words, like, it was hard. It took us 2 decades to even get into the business, and we were going to be super, super careful. So right now we're just massively conservative in the way we invest the reserves. Over time, if our loss ratio remains kind of in the level that we do, we take more and more risk. We think it becomes ultimately a real financial strength of the business not just from a balance sheet perspective, but the ability to make investments out of the gains on that. But right now it's just protect capital at all costs, and especially given that we're in this bizarre kind of catastrophic environment. Hurricane Ian, you've probably already read in the news, it's going to be one of the largest auto insurance losses ever in the world. bigger than Superstorm Sandy. Sandy was our single biggest loss ever, but still we didn't pierce into our reinsurance layer. So we've been really successful in managing capital to this point. We're just going to be, I don't know if this makes sense. I'm just very conservative. I'm very Midwestern when it comes to our capital. So we're going to keep it that way.
All
Yeah,
right.
so,
Thank you.
you.
You have travel.
I do. I got to go home.
Thank you.
So yes.
Thank you for making like a business come to life, right?
Yeah, thank you.
And like these are not just things on a screen. Like they are run by people, right? They have different products. They have different strategies. They have different reasons why they might be successful. And like so, anyway, I think you helped highlight that. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.